Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're doing something a little bit different. Usually we grab a book that promises to, make you happier or richer, more productive. But today, we're looking at a book that basically tells you to stop trying so hard.
Right.
We are diving into Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck.
It is certainly a title that wakes you up.
I
But I think a lot of people see that bright orange cover and, the profanity, and they just assume it's a gag gift or some kind of rant.
Yeah.
It's not. It's actually a deeply philosophical argument about values.
Yeah, I'll admit I expected a lot of screw the world attitude. But instead, we start with Charles Bukowski.
Hmm.
And I have to say, this is a weird choice for a role model.
He is the ultimate anti-hero.
I mean, let's just paint the picture here. The guy was a lout, to use Manson's word. An alcoholic, a womanizer, a chronic gambler.
Right.
He worked this dead-end job as a letter filer, hated it, and just blew every paycheck on booze and the racetrack. He spent decades writing poetry that nobody wanted.
He was basically the definition of a loser by, any societal standard.
And yet, later in life, he becomes incredibly successful.
Yeah.
Millions of books sold, fame, the whole deal.
The poet laureate of American lowlife.
Right, and this is the part where the movie trailer voice comes in, He never gave up. He believed in himself when no one else would.
You would think so. But that is the standard narrative, and that's exactly what Manson rejects. Bukowski didn't succeed because he transformed into some kind of winner. He succeeded because he knew he was a loser, he accepted it, and he wrote about it honestly. He didn't try to hide his flaws.
Which brings us to the kicker.
Yeah.
Bukowski dies a famous man. And what does he have put on his tombstone? Is it, I showed them, or persistence pays off?
No. 2 words, don't try.
Don't try. See, that's where I get stuck. That sounds like just terrible advice. If I tell my kids don't try, they're going to fail math class.
Right.
Is Manson actually saying we should just give up on everything?
Yeah. No, and this is the crucial distinction. Don't try doesn't mean don't act. It means stop trying to be something you aren't.
Okay.
Stop trying to convince yourself and the world that you are this, perfect, happy, successful entity. Bukowski didn't try to be a scholar. He was a drunk who wrote poems. He just owned it.
Okay, so it's a slap in the face to that culture of toxic positivity, the Instagram feed where everyone is #blessed and living their best life 24/7.
Exactly. Manson argues that this obsession with more, be happier, be healthier, be richer, is actually a fixation on what you lack. Think about it. Happy people don't stand in front of a mirror and chant, I am happy.
Because they actually are happy.
Right. If you have to affirm it, you don't really have it.
So if the mission isn't be positive, and it's not be apathetic, because he's really clear that not giving a feck doesn't mean being indifferent, then what is the actual mission here?
It's about the subtle art of prioritization. It's about economy. You only have a limited amount of energy, a limited amount of fucks to give in your lifetime. Right. And if you spend them on everything, the rude barista, the slow Wi-Fi, the fact that your ex got a promotion, you are going to burn out. You have to choose what actually matters.
Okay, that makes sense on paper. But in practice, my brain doesn't seem to have an off switch. Manson talks about this thing called the feedback loop from hell, and I felt personally attacked.
I think we all do. It's a uniquely modern neurosis. Walk me through what that looks like for you.
Okay, so let's say I get anxious about this recording. I'm worried I'll say something stupid. That's like the first layer.
Sure.
But then I notice I'm anxious, and I think, I've been doing this for years. Why am I so weak? I shouldn't be anxious. So now I'm anxious about the fact that I'm anxious.
And it just spirals. You can get angry that you're angry or sad that you're sad.
It's a double whammy. You feel bad, and then you feel bad about feeling bad.
And this is where Manson introduces the backwards law, a concept from the philosopher Alan Watts. And this is the hardest part for people to grasp because it feels so counterintuitive.
It really does. Break it down for me.
The law is the desire for more positive experience is itself a negative experience. And conversely, the acceptance of one's negative experience is itself a positive experience.
Okay, my brain just cramped. Run that by me again. How is wanting to be happy a negative thing?
Think about that psychedelic trip analogy Manson uses.
Okay.
Imagine you're hallucinating and you see a house in the distance. You want to get to the house that represents happiness. But because it's a hallucination, every step you take toward the house makes the house move 2 steps further away.
So the chase itself is pushing it away.
In a way, yeah. By constantly pursuing happiness, you are constantly reinforcing the signal to your brain that you don't have it. You're reinforcing the lack.
But if you stop,
But if you just accept the mud you're standing in.
If I accept that I'm anxious.
Right. If you say, okay, I'm anxious, that's fine, it's just a feeling, you short-circuit the feedback loop. You aren't anxious about being anxious anymore. You're just anxious. And weirdly, that acceptance makes the anxiety less terrible. That is the positive experience.
So not giving a feck isn't about not caring. It's about not caring about the secondary feelings. It's about not beating yourself up for being human.
Precisely. And Manson gives us 3 subtleties to help navigate this. First, not giving a feck doesn't mean being indifferent. That's a psychopath. It means being comfortable with being different.
Right.
Being willing to be the odd one out.
And the second subtlety was the one that really clicked for me. He says, you must care about something more important than the adversity.
This is critical. He uses the example of the elderly lady at the grocery store.
The one screaming at the poor teenage cashier over a 30-cent coupon.
Her. Now, why is she exploding over 30 cents? It's not about the money.
It's because she has nothing else going on.
Exactly. Her
Yeah.
world has just shrunk. The most important thing in her life at that moment is that coupon. And if you don't find something meaningful to dedicate your energy to, a project, a value, a relationship, your fucks will naturally drift toward meaningless, trivial stuff.
So if I'm getting mad at traffic, it's a sign I need better problems.
It's a sign that you haven't allocated your fucks to something big enough to overshadow the traffic, which leads to the third subtlety. You are always choosing. Maturity is simply becoming more selective about what you care about.
Speaking of problems, let's go back to happiness for a second. We have this idea that happiness is a math equation. If I get the promotion plus the new car divided by a vacation to Bali, I will equal happy.
The solvable equation fallacy. Manson dismantles this with the story of the prince who became the Buddha.
The prince had it all right.
He had everything. Palaces, women, gold. He was protected from all suffering, and he was miserable because it all felt meaningless.
So he went to the other extreme.
He hopped the fence, saw old age and sickness, and decided to try the opposite. He became an ascetic, he starved himself, slept in the dirt.
And spoiler alert, he was miserable there too.
He realized that rich was bad and poor was bad, that suffering was just inevitable. And this brings us to what might be the best character in the book, the disappointment panda.
I desperately want the disappointment panda to be a real thing. Can we just describe him? He's a superhero who wears a cheap eye mask and goes door to door telling people harsh truths.
He is the hero we need, not the one we want. And his message is simple. Happiness is not a destination. Happiness comes from solving problems.
Solving problems? I thought happiness was not having problems.
And that's the mistake. Problems never stop. They just get upgraded.
Upgraded.
Yeah. If you're broke, your problem is, how do I pay rent? If you're Warren Buffett, your problem is, how do I navigate complex tax laws? Buffett has better problems than the broke guy, but he still has problems.
So the goal isn't a life without pain. It's a life with better pain.
Correct. And that changes the question you ask yourself. Instead of asking, what do I want to enjoy, you should be asking, what pain do I want?
Manson uses the rock star example here. And I totally related to this because I went through a phase where I thought I wanted to be a touring musician. I saw the stage, the lights, the crowds.
You wanted the summit.
I wanted the summit. But I didn't want the climb. I didn't want to haul 50-pound amps up 3 flights of stairs at 2 a.m. I didn't want to sleep in a van that smells like old socks.
Like rehearsals.
I didn't want any of it.
And because you didn't want the pain, you didn't actually want the goal, you just liked the idea of the goal. Manson wanted to be a rock star too, but he realized he just didn't have the stamina for that struggle. If you don't love the process, the result won't make you happy.
That is a harsh reality check. But you know what's worse than realizing you don't want the struggle? Deluding yourself that you're already at the summit. We need to talk about Jimmy.
Oh, Jimmy. We all know a Jimmy.
Jimmy is that guy who is always launching a game-changing startup. He's always name-dropping. He talks about his vision, but he's actually just a deadbeat living off his parents.
Right.
But the weird thing is, Jimmy isn't insecure. He feels great about himself.
Jimmy is the dark side of the self-esteem movement. For decades, psychologists thought high self-esteem was the cure-all. Teach kids they are special, and they will succeed. Jimmy proves you can feel amazing about yourself and still be a total disaster. This is entitlement.
And Manson breaks entitlement down into 2 flavors. There's the Jimmy flavor. I'm awesome, and the rest of you just don't get my genius.
But there's a second flavor that is much sneakier.
Which is?
I suck, and the rest of you are awesome.
Hold on. How is thinking I suck a form of entitlement. That sounds like the opposite.
It feels like the opposite, but it's actually the same mechanism. It's a form of victimhood. If you believe your problems are so unique, so incredibly terrible that no one can possibly understand them, you are claiming a special status. You are claiming that the rules of the universe, like taking action to fix your life, don't apply to you because you're special and you're suffering.
Damn. So thinking you're the worst is just as arrogant as thinking you're the best.
Exactly. They both center the universe around your ego. And this links directly to the chapter, You Are Not Special. Sounds like an insult, doesn't it?
It does. Nobody wants to hear you're average.
But Manson frames it as liberation. Think about the pressure we are under. The media just bombards us with the extreme 0.001% of humanity. Elon Musk, Beyonce, or on the flip side, horrific tragedies.
Right.
We are trained to think that if we aren't changing the world or suffering drastically, we aren't really existing.
We feel invisible if we're just...
But the vast majority of life is just okay. It's the middle. And if you accept that you are not special, that your problems are common, it takes all the pressure off. You can actually enjoy a simple conversation without feeling like a failure because you aren't live streaming it to 1 million followers.
So once we strip away the I'm special delusion, we have to look at what's actually there. Manson uses the onion of self-awareness.
Because self-awareness has layers, and the deeper you go, the more likely you are to cry.
So layer 1 is easy. Knowing what you feel. I feel angry. Layer 2 is harder. Asking why. I'm angry because my brother didn't call me on my birthday.
And layer 3 is where the real work happens. It's asking, why do I consider this a failure? And this gets to your values. Why does your brother not calling equate to you being unloved? What metric are you using?
This is where the book gets really interesting with a comparison of 2 rock stars, Dave Mustaine and Pete Best.
This is the perfect case study in metrics. Dave Mustaine is a legend. He formed Megadeth, sold 25 million albums, toured the world. Objectively, he is a massive success.
But he started out in Metallica, and they kicked him out right before they got huge.
Right, so even though he sold millions of records, in his own head he was a failure. Why? Because his metric was, did I beat Metallica? And since Metallica is one of the biggest bands in history, he always lost. He chose a value, be better than Metallica, that guaranteed his misery.
Contrast that with Pete Best. He was the original drummer for the Beatles, and they kicked him out right before Beatlemania.
Can you even imagine that? Watching your friends become the most famous people on the planet while you're sitting at home.
I'd be bitter for the rest of my life.
He was, for a while. But eventually he changed his values. He stopped measuring himself by fame and started measuring himself by his family, his marriage, his simple life. In an interview years later, he said, I'm happier than I would have been with the Beatles.
That's incredible. It's all about the yardstick you use.
Right.
And Manson talks about shitty values versus good values.
Shitty values are things like pleasure, material success, always being right, and interestingly, staying positive.
Staying positive is a bad value.
If it's your primary value, yes, because it requires you to deny reality. If your house is on fire, staying positive isn't going to save you. You need to address the problem.
And good values are reality-based, socially constructive, and controllable. He tells the story of Hiru Onoda here. This one just blew my mind.
It is such a tragic story. Onoda was a Japanese soldier left on an island in the Philippines in 1944. He was told to hold the island and never surrender.
And the war ended in 1945.
Right. But Onoda stayed in the jungle for 30 years.
30 years. He was eating cows, stealing rice, and, this is the dark part, he was killing local villagers who he thought were enemy spies.
He killed innocent people. He wasted the prime of his life sleeping in the mud, all because of one value, loyalty to the empire. And on the surface, loyalty sounds like a good value, right?
That sounds great.
But because the context the empire didn't exist anymore, that value became destructive. He wasn't a hero. He was a victim of a bad metric.
This leads us to what I think is maybe the most important concept in the whole book, the difference between responsibility and fault.
Yes. This is the game changer. We often use these words interchangeably, but they are totally different.
Manson uses a really vivid image here, he says. Imagine you wake up tomorrow and there is a newborn baby on your doorstep.
Okay.
You didn't put it there.
Yeah.
You don't know whose it is. It is 100% not your fault that the baby is there.
Right. You are not to blame. But whose responsibility is it?
Well, it's mine. I can't just step over the baby and go to work. I have to call the police or bring it inside or feed it. I have to make a choice.
Exactly. Fault is past tense. It's about who caused the situation. Responsibility is present tense. It's about how you choose to respond right now.
And this applies to everything. Manson talks about a guy whose son died. It clearly wasn't the father's fault. But if he spends the rest of his life drinking and destroying his marriage, that is his responsibility.
He is responsible for how he navigates the grief.
Right.
We are always dealt a hand of cards. That's the poker analogy. You don't choose your genetics, your parents, or the economy. That's not your fault. But how you play the hand, that is 100% on you.
But playing the hand is scary, especially if you have a bad hand. We freeze up. Manson calls this Manson's law of avoidance,
which states, the more something threatens your identity, the more you will avoid it.
This explains why I procrastinate on big projects.
It explains a lot. We avoid failure, obviously, but we also avoid success. If you identify as the underappreciated creative genius, you might unconsciously avoid actually finishing your screenplay. Because if you finish it and it's bad, you lose your identity. And if you finish it and it's a hit, you lose your identity as the underappreciated one.
So keeping your identity small is the key. Never know who you are.
Right. If you don't cling to, I'm a genius or I'm a victim, you are free to just act.
But what if you don't know how to act? What if you're just stuck?
Then you use the do something principle.
This flips the usual motivation chain we usually think. Inspiration leads to motivation, which leads to action.
Yeah.
I need to feel inspired to write, so why wait for the muse?
And if the muse doesn't show up, you play video games, Manson says. Flip it. Action leads to inspiration, which leads to motivation.
Just do something. Anything.
Or even the smallest thing. He tells the story of Picasso in a cafe. A woman sees him scribbling on a napkin and asks to buy it. He says, sure, that'll be $20,000.
And she's outraged.
She says, that took you 2 minutes. He says, no, madam, it took me 60 years.
The point being, the masterpiece comes from the thousands of bad drawings that came before it. You have to be willing to fail to get anywhere.
And you have to be willing to be rejected.
Which brings us to the final stretch. Relationships. Manson tells a story about traveling in Russia that was just hilarious.
It's a great cultural contrast. In the West, we are, polite. If someone says something stupid, we smile and nod because we don't want to be mean.
Yeah.
In Russia, Manson found that if he said something stupid, people would just tell him, that's stupid.
It felt rude to him at first.
But he realized it was actually a form of intimacy. It was honest. You always knew where you stood. You cannot have trust without the possibility of rejection. If you can't say no, your yes means nothing.
Total freedom is meaningless. You have to commit to something and reject the alternatives to find depth. And this brings us to the holy grail of romance, Romeo and Juliet.
Or, as Manson calls them, mentally ill kids.
I mean, when you actually look at the play, he's right. They knew each other for, 3 days?
Yeah.
And 6 people died.
It is a disaster, but we romanticize it. Manson uses it to define unhealthy love. Unhealthy love is 2 people trying to use each other to escape their own problems. You complete me is actually a terrifying phrase.
It implies you're incomplete on your own.
Exactly. Healthy love is 2 people who are already whole, supporting each other while they solve their own problems.
Boundaries.
Yeah.
It's all about boundaries.
Yes.
You are responsible for your values. Your partner's responsible for theirs. You can support them, but you can't be them.
Right.
So let's wrap this up. We've covered a lot. The feedback loop, the disappointment panda, the onion, the baby on the doorstep. What is the big takeaway here?
If we zoom out, I think Manson is inviting us to stop this desperate struggle to be special. It's a relief. You don't have to change the world. You don't have to be happy all the time. You just have to figure out what few things actually matter to you and let the rest go.
It's about being better at choosing our problems.
And taking responsibility for them.
I want to leave everyone with a final thought from the end of the book. It's a bit provocative. Manson talks about killing yourself.
Metaphorically?
Yes, very metaphorically. He means killing the idea of who you are. Killing the ego that says, I have to be right or I have to be famous.
Because if you let go of that stiff, heavy identity, if you assume you aren't special and you aren't the center of the universe, what are you suddenly free to accomplish?
That's the question to chew on. Once you stop trying to be someone, you might finally start living. Thanks for taking this dive with us. We'll see you on the next one.